Okay, we started recording, so let me share the screen. And there we go. Okay, wonderful. Okay, Rolf Versluis, and I started cryptocurrency mining in late 2015, so that's almost 3 years ago. And here I've got a presentation to go through about some of the things that I learned. And as I first got started, I realized that there weren't a lot of people that were posting information on how to do mining, especially mining in anything other than a hobby type thing, although there were some articles that I'd see about really big industrial miners. But I'm a small business person, and I like doing things at a business level, so bigger than just personal mining, and I didn't know anything about it, so I started mining, and then rapidly grew, and I started a website and with blog posts and videos showing people how to run a mining operation as a small-sized business. And even though it's not as profitable right now, I expect the mining profitability to come back. But still, if mining is profitable now, even if you're, well, as long as you're one of the lower cost mining operators out there, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So first off, why even do cryptocurrency mining? It can be really profitable. So I bought some equipment here a few weeks ago, plugged it in, some of the new silicon Equihash miners, and just doing the calculation on them. At this point in time, it looks like they should pay themselves back in about 3 months. As more equipment gets online, I expect that to extend out to maybe 8 to 10 months payback. But any type of business where you get 100% return on your investment in less than a year is a really good business. So even if you're doing this as a side gig or something that you just want to play around with, there's always new equipment out there that's profitable if you research a little bit about what it is that you are going to look at mining. It lets you buy cryptocurrency at a discount. So it also lets you buy it as long as you're mining every day. Some people say, well, the cost of mining today is less than going out and buying that cryptocurrency on an exchange. But my point is, will you really actually go buy the cryptocurrency on the exchange if you shut down your miner? And I don't know how taxes are set up for businesses in Norway, but here at least, there's any expenses, or most of the expenses that are done through a business can be used to offset taxes. Certainly, mining helps cryptocurrencies stay up and operating. In some cases, with some of the brand new cryptocurrencies, they're not even able to be purchased on an exchange. And it's possible to mine for those before they're traded anywhere. And that's a good way to get new cryptocurrencies that you think might have a good team and might have a good future without having to go out and buy them. And it's, as far as hobbies go, it is mostly harmless, and you might even learn something. So there's a picture of my mid-sized mining facility. You can see I've got a warehouse and then a box within a box. It isn't the ideal type of facility, but sometimes getting to market quickly is more important than getting the ideal facility. What I prefer is to have the air blow in from one end and then out the other. Instead, as you'll see from some other pictures, I have the intake and exhaust air coming in the same side. But I was able to get up and running quickly, which in a lot of cases helps. So if you're at all interested in mining, and I've talked to a few different people that were analyzing so many different things, I tell them, look, just buy a single miner. Buy one miner, or build a miner, or get started mining with a graphics card on your computer, although graphics card mining isn't as profitable right now, because just that act of buying and using a single miner, you'll learn so much, whether this is something that you want to do, and all the different ways to figure out how to get profitable. So here's a picture of the first miner that I bought. It was a Bitmain Antminer S7. And that was almost 3 years ago. And after I figured out that I couldn't plug in more than 4 in the basement of my house, I went and rented a small office space. I'll do this all in US dollars. The small office space I'm in the space now. It lets me come and do work without having to deal with things around the house. And it's about 1,500 square feet, and it costs about $1,100 a month, so a little over $1,000 a month. And you can see in the warehouse space, I had some electrical brought in, and I set up 2 of the miners and a network just to see how they're working. And right after that, the neighbors right next door in the space said it was too loud and noisy. And so then I had to start building something to make it less noisy. So I built a room within a room. And over on the right, you'll see that I have a roll-up garage door that I used for ventilation. So I rolled the garage door up all the way and then built a little vent for bringing air in and a fan for blowing air out. And to even figure out what type of miner to buy, I would recommend starting with an algorithm leader and getting the most profitable miner at a reasonable price out there that you can. There's a few places that you can go research which cryptocurrencies are mineable. I always like to look at the different cryptocurrencies by looking at the team, what they're trying to do, track record, all sorts of different things. But right now, I mine Bitcoin, I mine Litecoin, Dash, sometimes Ethereum or Ethereum Classic. I don't really mine Monero, but I could. And I mine Zcash and, of course, Horizon. So those are just some of the ones that you might want to start with. And here's further pictures. You can see on the left that as I started to get some Antminer S7s, I started putting them on a rack. And these put out a lot of heat. They have about 1,500 watts of power, and all that electricity gets turned into heat that then needs to be exhausted. And and then the middle picture here, I started adding network and power distribution units. And then I started getting into graphics mining, so graphics cards. So there wasn't very much information that I could find back then on how to build a GPU miner. So my very first one is in the upper right. I did a lot of things wrong. I burnt out cards. It wasn't very efficient. In the bottom right is a GPU miner that I built earlier this year, or maybe almost a year ago. And you can see it's a lot more elegant and efficient. All right, so a little bit of background on me. I'm fortunate that I have a good experience in my background. I'm an engineer. I was an electrical engineer by training at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. Then I went on to the U.S. Navy Nuclear Power Training Program, which is the longest running nuclear power training program in the world. They had an operating nuclear power plant on a submarine. And then went and worked, get out of the Navy, went and worked in private industry, worked for Cisco Systems for a little bit, then started my own business as an IT company, selling, installing, troubleshooting Cisco Systems products, and grew that. So I got the experience of data networking as well as growing a small business up to about 60 people. And when I sold that in 2014, then I was looking around. I worked for them for about 6 months and then decided I needed to go do something else. And I looked around for things to do. So I like being in industries that are growing fast because they're adding lots of people. They tend to have high profit margins. And it's fun to be in a new and rapidly growing industry. It's more fun to be in one of those than an industry that's slowly declining and having lots of competition for margins and other things like that. So I looked at doing flying drones, unmanned aerial vehicles for profit. I experimented with 3D printing, but I figured out with cryptocurrency that there was 2 good ways to make cryptocurrency, and I've discovered other ways to make money with cryptocurrency since then, but mining and then starting a cryptocurrency. And back then it was possible as a developer to start a cryptocurrency. Now it's a little bit more complex. Oh yeah, and then I didn't want to go work for somebody because we homeschool our 4 children. This is a picture of my son, Grant, a couple of years ago. I gave him the opportunity to help build and troubleshoot and install about 30 GPU miners. So now he has the experience of doing that. And he also position trades cryptocurrencies. And So position trading is about all that I'm good at. I'm like, wow, that cryptocurrency looks cheap. I'll buy some. And oh, it looks a little expensive. I'll sell some. That's about it. All right. So any questions so far? If not, I'll just keep on going. All right. Let me talk a little bit about what I think, based on my experience, that a miner needs. It ends up being more than just buying something and plugging it in if you want to be profitable and operate it like a business. So here's the mid-sized mining facility that I designed, and it's got a little bit more miners in it now because we ended up filling it up completely. But the basics are all there. So obviously you need space. You need a dedicated space. And it can be part of the smaller space. I was very fortunate when I rented this warehouse that the owner of the building agreed to let me bring in a lot of electricity and cut holes in the walls to put ventilation fans in. Some of my friends that were looking at doing that were not able to find landlords that were that open to doing something like that. So many people ended up that I work with bought their own buildings. You definitely need power, a lot of electrical power. At this point in time, at this facility, I have a 1,000 kVA transformer just for this space here. And I think I use about 700 to 800 kilowatts of electricity right now. And cooling. Air conditioning is expensive. It's a lot easier, since each of these miners puts out a lot of heat, to just bring in outside air and send the hot air back out. So data networking, it's not a very complex data networking, but each of these devices needs to make its way to the internet. Security, physical security, cameras, and then network security, so your systems don't get hacked. Obviously the different hardware, wallets, exchanges. So once you mine your cryptocurrency, you have to have a way to turn it into Bitcoin and then eventually Kronos. And there's always something new. So I have a friend who's a miner, and he does GPU mining, graphics card mining, but he does it by researching new cryptocurrencies, mining them for a while, waiting till they get onto an exchange, and then selling them to the new people that are on there. And that's a profitable but time-intensive way to do it. The equipment goes obsolete relatively quickly. You're not going to get more than 2 years of use out of a miner typically at this point in time. Although, and I'll talk about semiconductor process technology soon, if you buy a miner that's at the latest semiconductor process technology, I expect that you're going to be able to use it for a few years at this point, as long as you keep the rest of your costs low. But it's important to keep money in the bank to pay for your bills for a few months. Important to keep some Bitcoin and not go to the financial edge, because this is a very volatile industry. And as anybody who's been involved in the cryptocurrency market has seen, for all this year, the prices have been down compared to December of last year, but they're up year over year, so that's good. Troubleshooting methodology. This one seems obvious, but when there's a problem with a machine or something's not mining, you need to know how to actually troubleshoot and have an actual troubleshooting process. Instead of just guessing and trying different things till something works, a process of elimination to figure out what's working and what's not working is very helpful. Low operational costs. This is one that I learned as a business owner is really, really important. Every aspect of your operation has to have the lowest cost possible. Cheap buildings. I don't have any employees. I have no employees. Me and my business partner and our kids do all the work ourselves. Employees can be very, very expensive. Use professionals, banks, insurance, accountants. When we built our facility, we did it rapidly, so we actually used professional contractors. In the newer facility that we're building now, we're using professional contractors, electricians, and mechanical contractors for the cooling system, and certainly framers. But we shopped it around to get the lowest cost possible. My feeling about this is there's a lot of costs that go into a mining business. And if your overall operational cost is some of the lowest of any mining operational costs in the world, no matter what the price does, as long as you have relatively new equipment and you keep your costs low, you can mine profitably. And that was, I'm glad that I did that and had that experience because I've been profitable all year. And then operate it as a business. Other expenses that you have, apply them to the business. And then the operational size makes a difference. So when I'll talk about a home miner or a hobby miner, that's typically less than 20 miners, and that's just for someone who's converting. I have a friend who runs a fitness facility, and he puts some miners in his facility, and he just uses the income from the fitness members to pay for his electricity. So it's a way to have his business income get slowly converted into cryptocurrency. Medium, to me, is less than 1,000 miners, something that you can do without employees, hopefully without investors. And then there's industrial type miners. These are the ones that you'll see in the in presentations or in news reports or things like that, because they've got investors, they've got employees, they've got all sorts of different things. All right, so here's a picture of some common mining hardware. This, I believe, is an early Antminer S9 or maybe an Antminer S7. It's got 3 hashing cards in it, got 2 fans, has some extruded aluminum to blow air through it, and most mining hardware, purpose-built mining hardware these days looks like this, of this type of format. So a little control card up front, a bunch of processors. This is still, so Bitmain makes a lot of miners out there. So SHA-256, secure hashing algorithm 256. And there's other cryptocurrency miners out there as well. I think Silicon has a lot of new miners, and they're really efficient. If I were going to be looking at buying a piece of new mining gear right now, I'd be looking at getting the Silicon X11 miner or the Silicon Equihash miner. Those are 2 of the favorites that I have from those guys right now. Graphics card mining was a thing about a year ago. It's not very profitable now. If you're looking to get into mining, I'd recommend staying away from graphics card mining. Or if you do want to get into it, buy your graphics cards on the used market, because there's a lot of people that are looking to unload some of their cards. Some of my earlier generation cards I just had to unplug because they were not very power efficient. Okay, here's a picture of the space. Even though I say buy your own space, I was able to successfully rent this space. And you can see it was at the end of the building, and I've got a dedicated transformer right next to it because those electrical runs are pretty expensive. In the garage door part, I have 4 intake fans, and I bring cold air in from the outside, and then 4 exhaust fans. It's not as ideal as I'd like because I think some of the exhaust air makes its way back into the intake, making it less efficient. So I try to put those up as high as possible. But at the other space that me and some other partners purchased, we're able to set it up better where these intake fans are on one end of the building and the exhaust are on the other. And then plan where your miners are. As you add more miners, give them numbers and make those numbers sensible. After I got about 100 miners, I realized that I couldn't find miners that were a problem. So I started numbering them and then assigning IP addresses to them based on the number and then putting the numbers on the rack. So that's something that, and then it took me a full day to renumber and re-IP address everything. After that, I was able to actually find miners that had a problem though. So that was good. Okay, here is a picture of the electricians putting in the panels, and my son a few years back looking at them. So this is when you start to get to higher levels of electricity, typically the power is brought in as 3-phase power. And 3-phase power is a little bit difficult to understand until you internalize it. But basically, we bring in 3-phase power into this 1200 amp panel. From this 1200 amp panel, we have 3 400 amp sub-panels. And so the 3 phases, you can see from the electrical cables, the 3 phases go to the 400 amp sub-panels, and then we just pull single phases off those. So because we have to provide single phase power to the AC to DC power supplies. So from a power stand, and that's why sometimes it's easier to talk in kilowatts or kilovolt amps, kVAs, as opposed to amps or things like that, because when there's a efficiency gain that you get from going to single phase to three phase of about 1.7. So for us, we use 208 volts because it's more efficient than 120 volts. I see some places that have 480 volt three-phase power. In that case, you'd need to get a step-down transformer. And one of the things that I didn't know, I should have known because I'm an electrical engineer, but I'm not a practicing electrician. Anytime an electrician tells you a number about amps or anything else, that's not what it can handle steady state. It usually can only handle 80% of that. So for me, every one of the outlets is a 30 amp outlet at 208 volts, but steady state, we can only run 80% of that. So we can only run 24 amps through it. And so at 208 volts, 24 amps, that's a little over 5,000 watts. And I like to use power distribution units. So 3 to 6 miners can be plugged into a power distribution unit. There's no reason to buy backup power, backup diesel or anything like that. If the power goes out, everything just shuts off and you're not mining, but you're not paying for power then either. And then when power comes back on, everything starts back up, boots back up, and it should be running. So I don't pay for backup power or uninterruptible power supplies. And this turns into real work. So here's a picture of the work that was done to bring in the electrical for the two parts of the build out. So big transformer, big copper wires, and down at the lower left, the way I have it configured, there's lots of different ways to do this, is to bring in 30 amp receptacles and plug in power distribution units into it. My cabling's a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. Whenever I have time to spend at the mining facility, I usually spend it making sure that all the equipment's working instead of making sure that it's neat. And I don't want to take the time or hire people to make everything look nice and neat. I didn't try solar power for mining, but we can talk about what solar power for mining would be. This is a 100-watt solar panel. If I wanted to power a miner, that's 1,500 watts. I'd need probably 15 of these. If I wanted to power that miner exclusively off solar power, I'd need to be able to have 3 to 4 times that, and then deep cycle batteries to store the power. So for one miner, I'd probably need to have somewhere between 50 and 60 of these panels. If I wanted to have 10 miners, that's 500 panels, 100 miners, 5,000 panels. I hear that there are people that are successfully using solar power, but I'd rather go get it from a hydropower plant. And so we took a tour of a close by hydropower plant. It's got some of the most efficient electricity manufacturing in the world. So if you're near a hydropower plant or a geothermal plant, or for whatever other reason you have good low electrical pricing, it's probably a good place to be mining. And then cooling. You need a lot of cooling. So each of these miners has 5.6 cubic meters per minute of airflow. So if you have 100 miners, you need, I don't know, about 500 cubic meters per miner. We're designing a facility right now, well, we're in the process of building it, that's going to have about 1,000 miners in it. And that's, about 5,000 cubic meters per minute total. So here, I have 4 fans, and these bring air in, and they provide cool air to the miners. The miners suck the cool air in, exhaust it to the outside, and then we take fans and send them back out. What I learned at my first small facility, and one of the reasons I like to prototype first, is if you don't put filters on your intake fans, you get all sorts of dust, and that dust goes directly to the miners. It's a lot easier to clean filters on the fans, or I use now a big filter and vent bank instead of putting filters on the individual fans, than to open up the miners and clean them individually. So, and then we have a nice big concrete space here that gets cool at night, so at least it keeps it somewhat cool during the day. And then during the winter, turn off some of the fans and let the air recirculate so it doesn't get too cold. If it gets too cold, there's actually problems with low humidity. Low humidity can cause static electricity problems. And then when the county fire marshal came and looked at it, all this is fireproof wood, but he also said that he wanted, if there was any, he wanted a smoke detector on the exhaust fans. And if there was smoke detected, he wanted all the fans turned off. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. We wouldn't want to feed a fire. So we have a lot of airflow. So here's me standing in front of the intake fans. Here in the bottom left is another view of the little room. You can see in the upper middle here the filters that are inside the fans. This is not the most efficient way to do it. I've learned better ways to do that. And then motor controllers. So I had originally thought that I should put each of the fans on a variable frequency device, which takes the regular AC power, runs it through DC, and then lets you turn the fan speed up and down. That turned out not to be that important. So for the second build, for the expansion, we didn't do any variable frequency devices. However, one of the things I learned is these first motor controllers, fan motor controllers, were electrical contactors. And when the building power went down and then came back up, all the equipment came back on, but the fans didn't come back on. So, our second, we had to fix that and essentially bypass those. And in the second, we used mechanical motor controllers. Mechanical motor controllers, they come back on when the power comes back on. Okay, any questions so far? All right. I guess you can tell this slide's a little bit older because back on this day, Bitcoin was at about $11,000 per Bitcoin, and maybe we'll get back to that at some point. But it's worth looking at what cryptocurrencies are most profitable to mine on websites like What to Mine or Coin Wars or other things like that. And the profitability that's listed there is the profitability at that point in time. But to me, it only matters when you sell, because that's when you get your, that's when you make your funds. So when you convert it into Bitcoin and when you convert the Bitcoin into money that you can pay your bills with. Maybe at some point in the future, you'll be able to pay your bills with Bitcoin. But for right now, you got to pay them in your local currency. So some people think that, well, some people mine and then immediately send their cryptocurrency mining to the exchange and sell it that day. Convert it into Bitcoin and convert it into dollars. If that's what you're going to do, then you might want to be having systems that always mine what's most profitable. What I prefer to do is mine projects that I think are going to be around for a while and are going to increase in value, and then when it increases in value, at that point, convert some of it to Bitcoin and then convert some of that Bitcoin to the local currency to pay the bills. Because that way, you're mining at a lower cost and selling at a higher cost. That's the idea anyway. That's easy to say when everything's going up in price. It's harder to do when everything's going down in price. Fortunately, prices have been fairly stable here in the last month. Okay, and then trade it for other cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there that can't be mined, like some of the cryptocurrencies that I like that that are not mineable are Cardano and EOS and other things like that that have good teams, good plans, good market opportunities, but aren't mineable. And a lot of times, if you haven't been in the cryptocurrency market for a long time, there's, Bitcoin goes up and down in price, and then there's usually when Bitcoin goes up in price, and then a few months later, all the other cryptocurrencies will go up in price because new money will come into Bitcoin, and then it'll go up in price too much, and then some of the existing money in Bitcoin flows into other cryptocurrencies. If you really want to get into trading in cryptocurrency markets, it's worth learning a little bit about technical analysis for entry and exit points, but definitely be aware that there's orchestrated market manipulation groups out there that do pump and dumps. So if you hold on to something that you think might go into that and it goes up in price a lot, you should sell it when it goes up in price a lot and then buy it back later. Okay. I was talking to a friend of mine that's been mining for a year, and he started mining a new cryptocurrency, mining it to his Hardwar wallet. You don't really ever want to mine to your Hardwar wallet, because in a lot of times with the mining is lots of small payments to a wallet, and those payments, to be able to be spent, have to be consolidated into larger payment. So I always recommend, for any cryptocurrency that you're going to mine, have an actual soft wallet on your PC, mine to an address on that PC, and then every week or 2 or 3, take your mining earnings and send that either to an exchange if you're going to sell it, or to a Hardwar wallet if you're going to hold on to it. That way it consolidates all those small transactions into a few larger ones. There's other ways to earn cryptocurrency than to just mine it. So there's some cryptocurrencies that are staking. They have proof of stake. They have staking wallets. So if you put your cryptocurrency in one of those wallets and leave it connected all the time, you'll get paid periodically. One of the ones that I use for that is Stratus. Masternodes, or with Horizon Secure and Supernodes. So if you put those in a wallet and then run a node server, which keeps the system up and running and provides a place for wallets to attach to, you get paid for that. A great way to see which cryptocurrencies, how much it costs to stake to get cryptocurrency for a masternode and how much the earnings are, is at masternodes.online. With some cryptocurrencies, you can actually get paid to vote. So Decred is one like that. Horizon, when the treasury and governance is going to be implemented, there's going to be some compensation for voting as well. Curation. So if any of y'all have not looked at Steemit, on Steemit, if you choose and upvote 10 posts per day on average, you'll earn more Steemit. So, and there's ways to do that automatically as well. And then in some cases, by owning one cryptocurrency, you would be able to get new ones that are launching that want to gain an immediate community. Okay, so the hodling word. If you're new to cryptocurrency and you hear the term hodl, H-O-D-L, it's from this guy's post way back when, I guess in 2013. Took me a couple of years to figure that out. I figured I might pass this information along to those of you that haven't heard the term before. So some people just aren't good at trading cryptocurrencies. I'm one of those people. Okay, so I spoke about this earlier. It's a rapidly growing industry, cryptocurrency is. And if you look at this graph here, which is a technology adoption curve, it talks about even things that are as old as the telegraph. Telegraph was a huge game changer. Can you imagine when people first started rolling telegraph wires out, how much money they were able to make? Then electricity, electrifying the different houses, putting in telephones, putting in plumbing systems, sewer systems, and then on to newer technologies, air conditioning, all sorts of different, well, I guess y'all don't need air conditioning there, but all sorts of technologies as they roll out in the rapidly rising part of the adoption curve. That's a great time to earn money in that industry. And you'll see this in these different industries as it gets past 10 to 20% adoption and goes from the 30 to 80 to 90% adoption part of the curve. Be involved in that industry one way or the other. Take your skill sets that you have and apply it to that industry, even if it's only in a part-time way, because it can be very profitable. In our Horizon project, we've got all sorts of different business functions. We operate as a complete small business for the team that's working to develop. Sure, we have software developers, we have an accountant, we have an attorney, we have business development folks, marketing people, graphics designers, project managers, all sorts of different people are required to get this cryptocurrency project to be where we want it to be. Fortunately, within cryptocurrency, there's an open source ethos. In a lot of cases, if you identify a cryptocurrency project that you'd like to be part of, figure out where their social media is, the Telegram channel, Discord channel, things like that. Go join it, start learning about it, start becoming active, and then start doing things. If you start doing things for the project, then pretty soon they'll say, wow, this is a person that knows what they're doing, can get things accomplished. Maybe we want to keep this person around to do more things like that. So that's been my experience anyway. Now, you probably don't want to let everybody know that you're doing cryptocurrency mining. For a while when Bitcoin was going up, so people that were very public in Bitcoin trading or that they're owning Bitcoin funds, there were some folks that were kidnapped and some of their Bitcoin was stolen from them. With all the different equipment that's in your cryptocurrency facility, don't want to have it stolen. If you let people know where you are and what you're doing, it can be stolen. Other things are, there's certain established businesses I've found, like banks and insurance companies, that don't like doing business with people that are involved in cryptocurrency. I've had, anyway, keep your cryptocurrency in a hardware wallet. Each of those hardware wallets will have a 24-word key. Keep those in safes, multiple safes, encode it, hide it in a book, do something, but make sure that the big advantage of cryptocurrency is that you can have all the control over your funds and nobody gets in the way of you spending them. Like if I want to buy $30,000 worth of new cryptocurrency miners from a company in China, I can send them Bitcoin and in 20 minutes they're paid. I don't have to go through a bank. I don't have to do a wire transfer. I don't have to do anything like that. It's wonderful. The downside is there's no one to protect you if you lose your cryptocurrency. So be careful. As the industry grows, everything's going to be easier. There'll be easier interfaces, but things won't be as profitable then either. So more information. I have lots of videos on my YouTube channel. They're a little bit older. But I tried to pass on a lot of the information that I learned as I was growing the business about cryptocurrency. I've taken a break from doing videos and doing new blog posts. I wasn't as excited about sharing the information, and it was more, instead of discovering something new, it was more just refining things. So I decided to stop doing that. Maybe I'll do more videos in the future. I don't know. Okay, so you probably have some questions. Here's some frequently asked questions, and I'll go through and answer them, and then y'all might have other ones. I include a picture here of when my business lost its bank account. Another one of my businesses, the insurance company said they wouldn't insure us anymore. So some banks are happy to work with folks that are involved in cryptocurrency, and others aren't. That's just the way it is. I'm sure most banks, if they were just independently operated, would do business with anybody they wanted, but a lot of times the government gets involved. I already talked about solar power. Will you make money if you start mining? I don't know. That's up to you. That's why I recommend people, if they're at all interested, acquire a newer model, a single miner, and operate it. You might find that it's too noisy or too confusing or too much work or just not something that you're interested in. It's not a magic way to make money. It's work. It's not super profitable, but it's more profitable than most businesses out there. So I like it, but I also like working with computers. Equipment, I would recommend buying equipment directly from the vendors themselves, not through any kind of reseller or anything like that. Bitmain has been providing good quality ASIC miners for a long time. They're not quite as competitive now. Silicon makes good miners, and there's some other manufacturers out there that are making good miners as well. Air conditioning, immersive cooling, it ends up being complicated, extra cost, and it doesn't get that much additional improvement, at least for my size operation. Maybe for an industrial size operation, immersive cooling makes sense, but that's where you put a non-electric transmitting liquid and use that to cool. But then you still got to take the heat out somewhere else. I don't do consulting. I don't take investments. I just like to let people know that cryptocurrency mining isn't just for supercomputer users and for large industrial organizations. It can be a really good way to have a side business that gets you involved in cryptocurrency and can be pretty profitable. Data networking and security. I recommend using a firewall. network switches. They don't have to be that important. The internet connection doesn't need to be that big. It helps to have low latency connection between whatever your miners and mining pool connects to. At one of my facilities, I have a broadband and I have cell phone data backup. Don't need to buy expensive networking equipment. I like to use the Cisco Meraki firewall, the MX64. I've got 600 miners running behind one of them, no problem at all. And it has a nice remote access VPN, and it's got a dual uplink, so I can have connections from 2 different internet providers, and if one of them goes down, it flips to the other one. Pretty much it on that. Mining software. A lot of the ASIC miners, they come with their own software. So if you look in the lower right, here's a picture of what typical AMP mining software looks like. And then, let's see, this is my GPU mining software. Not mine. I use this. It provides statistics on it. You have the software connect to mining pools. And as you get to having even more miners, you might want to monitor and do monitoring and management. So here is a picture of Awesome Miner, which is the application I use. I was doing some of my own open source mining software and customizing it, but Awesome Miner is not very expensive compared to the price of the miner. It costs about $50 per miner. And it will monitor them, give you an estimate of profitability, and then allow, if there's a problem, it'll reboot the machines. So, and then there's an open version at Minera. I haven't tried that yet. I might try that also. It helps to understand a little bit about Linux operating systems, but this Awesome Miner runs on Windows. Okay, I alluded to this earlier, for how long is equipment good for? And this has to do with semiconductor process technology. So the miners that I have most of are either a 28 nanometer process technology or a 1416. So like an Antminer S9 is 1416 nanometer technology out there. The graphics cards I have are 14 nanometer technology. So like the Antminer D3 and L3 Plus is 28 nanometer technology. It takes a lot of money for semiconductor manufacturers to build wafer fabrication facilities that can do new technologies, or 10 or 7 nanometers. So typically, these are reserved for the most profitable semiconductors, which are like mobile device or cell phone processors or memory chips. There's not many 7 nanometer wafer fabrication facilities that exist. There's some at 10 nanometer. So there's people that are advertising that they have new equipment coming out at 10 or 7 nanometers. It's been hard for folks to build. If there is some successful ASIC miners that are 10 or 7 nanometer technology, it's probably worth buying those. I would predict that those are going to last for 2 to 3 years before anything better can come out. So 2 to 3 years is a pretty good lifetime in mining equipment. So I don't buy mining equipment as soon as the new models come out. It tends to be overpriced. For example, the Innosilicon A9 Z Master, when it first came out in April or May, was $10,000. A month ago, I was able to buy some when they hit a low price of $3,100. Now, they're not as profitable now, but they're still pretty darn profitable. So what I've learned over time is when new equipment comes out, wait a couple months and then buy it. And if you know what its process technology is, you can have an idea of how long it's going to be good for. And that's pretty much what I have. I don't need to show. I mean, you can just go to my YouTube channel and see a video of a mining facility later if you wanted to. Let's see. Oh, that's all I really had. Okay. Any questions? I'm happy to answer questions on this stuff.
I think I got a few questions while you were talking. I don't remember them right now. So is it possible to talk to you over Skype or
Yeah.
questions later?
Yeah. But does anybody in the room have questions right now, or did I go on for too long?
I don't think so. Maybe there'll pop up some questions
Okay.
later. Would you be interested in answering questions if I talk to you on Skype later?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
after?
I should have time for that.
Yeah. I don't mean right now. I mean like at a later time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So I gotta say thanks for doing this session. I've learned a lot, or gotten some new ideas on how to do my mining operation. So that's cool.
Wonderful.
Well,
All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Appreciate it.
thanks. Bye.
Thank you.